we are back, the Confluence Podcast. My name is Luke Geraty. This is Andrew. This is Matt. We are back after a long hiatus.
Yeah, it's good to be back.
Yeah, we're 2025. We're doing it.
Yep. Right.
So yeah, we're gonna talk about the Yuba River here in Northern California, and on this episode, just talk about the fishery techniques, trout. There's trout there, a lot of trout.
There's fish.
And Matt, Andrew, you've been there quite a bit back in the day.
Yeah, I guided there quite a while ago, extensively, and always enjoyed it. I mean, and the conditions now are very similar to how they were then.
Oh, cool.
I think.
And Matt, you're on it quite a bit now.
Yep. Myself, Colin as well. And it's just been fun. One of the things I realized is it is a diverse river. And when I say that, what I mean is you have opportunities within the same day of throwing dry flies, fishing indicator, and throwing streamers, and potentially catching fish on all three of those in the same day. I was doing that last year. It was super fun for the clients. They were having a blast. And then, it's been really nice out there in general too, because they closed down a road that had allowed access to four-wheel drive vehicles. That's no longer accessible. So it's really cut down on the pressure, but also just the noise in general. So it's really peaceful out there right now. And a lot of clients have picked up on that. It's been so nice. And anytime you can get out on the water in California, I'm sure, you guys will agree, like generally you have a fair amount of company, right? And I would say on the majority of my trips out there in the last 8 to 10 months, the average has been maybe 1 or 2 boats, and a lot of days there's just been us.
That's nice.
And it's such a treat.
Yeah. Let's start with this, though. So we're talking about a river in Northern California. Yeah. Where's the location,
So that's a really good question. I had some guys come up from the south earlier in the year, and they had booked me on the lower Sac. We did a day or two there, and then I said, hey, let's go fish the Yuba, and they literally had never heard of it. Mm-hmm. So it's about 20 minutes northeast of Marysville.
Okay.
In Browns Valley area that we're fishing it. We're fishing around below the Highway 20 bridge and then down to the DeGear Dam. It is a tailwater, and it fishes pretty much 12 months out of the year. So it's pretty close to Sacramento. It's still a day trip from San Francisco as well. When I was living in San Francisco, it was definitely one of the rivers where I would make a day trip to it. So, it's, I think, about a 2-hour drive from San Francisco, roughly, and about an hour and 20 hour and a half from Sacramento.
Okay. And it's like, 40 minutes away from Chico?
Yeah, it's about 40 to 50 minutes away from Chico.
Okay.
So that brings up a good point. I've also had clients, if they stay in Chico, it's kind of a central location. We can do a day on the lower Sac, right? We can do a day on the Yuba or a day on the Feather, and they're all about an hour away, right? So you have options staying in Chico. So that's also one of the nice things. The Yuba offers you, something different than the lower Sac and the Feather. But you can also hit those guys at the same time.
Gotcha. Okay. So you're talking about drift boat, fly fishing from the drift boat. That's what the trip entails.
Yeah, the majority of what we're doing out there is from the drift boat. Obviously, on any river, right? If we always try to accommodate our clients, right? We talk to them, try to understand what they're looking for, and if they say, hey, we'd like to get out at some point, maybe do a little walk and wade, we can facilitate that, right? You just need to communicate that to us. The majority of what we're doing out there right now is from the drift boat, but I know when I took you out there the first time, right? We got out in a couple places, and
you did make me get out, and you made me miss a fish. It was all your fault.
Oh wow!
So. Yeah, I made him miss. I made him miss a fish.
About that. Yeah.
I still remember that.
Yeah,
did you have to loan him some wading boots and some waders?
Yeah, he was.
I just got out my sandals. So I was fine. But...
it's kind of like a cat putting its paw into the water. It was
it's true.
Wasn't quite sure if he wanted to do it, but
no, I actually, so just one I guess my experience on the Yuba, because I think it's kind of cool. So I think I fished it the first time with Mike Wright, maybe 5 years ago. And it was hilarious. I mean, this is just hilarious because I don't know if he was messing with me or not, but I was like, so, what are we expecting today? And I was just kind of curious. Like, I understand every fishery is different. I'm like, yeah, how many fish do you think we're going to hook? And he's like, oh, 5. And I was like, oh, each? He's like, no, total. And I was like, is he messing with me? And so, and we ended up hooking a decent amount of fish. It was a good day. I got one hatchery steelhead that went rogue. That was cool. But just from 5 years ago to fishing with you last year and then just this season, I mean, it seems like the river has just gotten better and better. And our last day we fished it, was that probably November or December?
Yeah.
And it was awesome. I was actually like, okay, this river's cool.
I like this river.
I like this river.
It's only because we fished eggs, actually, that you were happy.
I was like, oh, this is so
I feel so comfortable.
Yeah.
You didn't even have to catch a fish.
No,
Still would have been happy.
He was just happy.
I saw salmon. I was cool. It was cool. So whatever. Yeah.
Well, I think one thing you hear about the Yuba when people talk about it is that it goes through cycles. With the fishing being good, and then it'll not be as good. Some of that has to do with the river can get tremendously high flows that kind of rearrange. I mean, new side channels will come into existence, and things will get moved around, and when it gets kind of scoured like that, it can be rough on the bugs, and sometimes it does take a season or two to get back to normal, or so I've heard some people say, oh, it's no good now, it's all scoured, and I guess we can let them keep thinking that.
Yeah,
right? I mean,
if they choose to, that's
So the population, the health of the fish population in there is really good right now. Is what I'm trying to say.
And also, I mean, those fish, I'd say they are some of the hardest biting fish that you're going to hook. No matter the size of the fish, whether it was 8 inches to 15, 16 inches, I was like, man, these things do not give up until the last. I mean, and they're in the net, they're still freaking out,
Yeah,
so
I do really like those fish. They're super plucky. I had a number of clients comment like, wow, these fish fight so hard, and they'd hook one, and we were kind of averaging around 10 to 12 inches, and like, this is going to be a big one, this is an 18-inch. I'm like, you're going to pull that fish up, and it's going to be 10 or 12 inches. They just fight hard.
Yeah,
they're all wild fish in there. They're beautiful, really nice specimens of what a wild trout should be. This time of year, as I mentioned, the river's diverse, right? It offers you options. And one of the things that it offers this time of year, in February through kind of March, is the opportunity to throw dry flies pretty much in the middle of winter, right? And that's just a rare opportunity. They're also fairly large dry flies. A lot of people can struggle to see those, 16, 18s that we have to throw a lot of times. These are squala. Stoneflies, they're about, I don't know, what would you say, an inch and a quarter?
Yeah, like a size 8 pattern,
maybe.
Yeah, they're big.
So you can see them. It's a lot of fun. You throw them to the bank. We do have to get the right conditions, which is typically a sunnier day, right? So obviously this time of year, weather's variable, but if we get the right conditions, then you have the opportunity to go out there in the middle of winter and throw some big dry flies and, switch it up a little bit. It's a lot of fun when you get that opportunity, and the fish can really key in. All right, I'll be honest, full transparency, I just couldn't catch this fish. So I sat there and watched it for 45 minutes one time. Just watched it, and it just came up and came up and came up, and just the whole time just chowed every single one that came down. And it was maybe, I was walking waiting at the time, and it was maybe 3 to 4 feet off the bank. But it was just awesome to see that fish literally just sitting there in a feeding lane and just chowing down on those guys.
Yeah.
I just got outmatched that day.
Yeah,
for sure.
It happens.
Well, so now when you're fishing from the drift boat, are you casting towards the bank most of the time when you're doing the squala thing?
Yeah, we're casting toward the bank a lot. It's somewhat similar to throwing hoppers, I guess you could say.
And so the fish are in shallower water, just
they tend
that
to be.
Edge water. Okay.
Yeah, and it's really fun. One of the things I like to talk to people about when we're out there is really help them read the water out there, really kind of hone in on little spots, little dips, little just slight depressions, changes where the rocks are just slightly blurrier in this 2 feet, which means it's just slightly deeper, right? That's enough to hold a fish, right? And so it's fun too if you're into sort of a more tactical kind of strategic approach and you really like to read the water and target fish, then that can be a lot of fun out there with the squala.
Got it. Now, I remember when I used to guide there, I did a fair bit in March and April and May. And this was a long time ago, but I remember the squala hatch kind of transitioned into like a March brown hatch.
Yeah. Yep.
Even, like sometimes you'd see them in January, but start seeing them more in February and then
Absolutely.
even in March, as you might guess. But
Yeah.
But so is that kind of the next big hatch?
Yeah, that's a great point. It's really cool because you come out of the squala and you do transition into these pretty big mayflies, these big gray March brown mayflies, and then at the same time we have PMDs coming off out there as well. We call them pinkies out there, but they're really just a PMD, I believe.
Like a 16.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I've certainly had days out there where, I've asked clients, I said, hey, look, guys, like I know this is a squala trip, but I think the fish are actually grabbing the mayflies. Are you cool, like, as catching them on dries if it's a mayfly or a squala? They're like, heck no problem. So we switched over to the mayflies, and that's what they were grabbing. So yeah, there's this transition period. Those will kind of blend together a little bit, and then it will definitely switch more into mayflies. But that's absolutely common too.
Are most of those hatches like kind of midday or afternoon, or are any of them good in the morning?
I would say usually they're more mid-afternoon type of hatches and into the evening. But we will get midge hatches out there in the morning sometimes too, and we can target fish sometimes during the morning midge hatch.
So why don't you walk us through like just the logistics and like what a typical Yuba guided trip day looks like?
Yeah, absolutely.
I know it involves going through gates. There's a lot of gate opening, gate unlocking, gate closing.
Yeah, a remote would be great, but I'm not sure we're going to get
That's
to that
not
point.
in the cards.
Yeah, no, that's probably never going to happen.
Someday.
But we're very grateful for the access that we have. We do have access to a private put-in and a private takeout. Generally, we'll meet the client at the Highway 76 gas station. And depending on whether they hire a shuttle or not, that'll dictate a little bit of the morning. Assuming they hire a shuttle, then I'll meet them there. We'll go to the put-in, right? We'll pass through a gate there. We'll put in, and we'll spend the day floating down to DeGear Dam. There's a private takeout there, couple gates. If they don't hire a shuttle, then we'll drive to the takeout in the morning. So their vehicle is behind basically two locked gates all day. Very safe.
Cool.
And then we'll drive up to the put-in and start our day.
Got it.
So it's fishing 12 months out of the year. There's always something going on up there. Luke and I have been out during the egg bite a couple times. Want to get you back out there this summer, I think.
I want to go for squallows.
Yeah.
As long as the weather cooperates.
An option?
Yeah, absolutely, it's an option. I'm happy to take you out there.
Thinking about techniques, so because the last time we were out there, you were really excited about the different technique options, and I just like stopped talking, keep my egg. But so there's dry fly opportunities, which and there's a indicator is what I've done with you, the times I fished it. But like streamer, what's that?
So that was something that I started doing a little bit more recently. That was just super fun and actually really productive out there. Again, there were a lot of days where I was doing all three, throwing dry flies, indicator fishing, and having guys pull streamers, and we were catching fish all three ways. I like to do that once it warms up a little bit. I was confused actually when I first went out there and had a day out there where the fish were just all over the streamer because it was really hot, right? And trout are a cold water species. So I asked a friend of mine who's a biologist, like, what's going on? I thought they'd be more lethargic and they wouldn't want to chase down, a bigger prey item. In fact, it's a fine line between we're uncomfortable and we're going to move and get lethargic. And because we're a cold water species, our metabolism speeds up, which means I can metabolize a bigger food item faster. Therefore, I'm more willing to go chase it down, right? Metabolized. Another one, they actually did a study, I believe it was up in Alaska in a creek, where they had these trout tagged. And the trout were traveling about 5 miles upstream. And what was upstream was salmon were spawning. And they were going and gorging on the eggs. But it was cold up there, right? Because they spawn in cold water. And then they would travel back down the 5 miles to where it was a couple degrees warmer. And they were metabolizing those eggs faster. And then they would go back up, sit behind the salmon, gorge themselves again, and come back down. Right, because it was just worth it from a ROI perspective.
Protein,
right?
Yeah.
That's how they get big, and that's their goal, right? So it's really
sounds smart.
It's really interesting that when things warm up, they are more willing to chase streamers out there. So It was kind of July, August, and we were throwing streamers and having a lot of fun. So
that's cool.
It was super.
So
cool.
are you Are you stripping? You're casting and stripping in? Are you swinging? What kind of streamer?
Both. It wasn't super complicated. It was throw it to the bank and strip it back pretty fast. But I'll have clients change up their retrieve to, hey, give it a 2 or 3 second, wait, right? Switch it up, see if they're interested in one retrieve over the other. But for the most part, I would say it was just a fairly even, fast retrieve back to the boat, throw it to the bank, pull it back. Did have a few fish grab on the swing. That's one of the other things that you can do out there. You can trout spay out there, especially in the evenings in the summer when there's a lot of caddis out there. Mm-hmm. And so you can swing pupa or soft tackles and find some success doing that.
I heard a rumor that Colin Coogan's going to be specializing in Tenkara.
Oh, on the Yuba.
That's what I've heard.
Wow.
I heard a rumor that Colin Coogan had a really trophy steelhead out there recently, right at the boat, and unfortunately they weren't able to net it. But that's one of the things
on the Yuba.
Yeah, that's one of the things that people should know too is those fish are wild, and there is a run of steelhead in there. The guy that we purchased the access through has access to the scientists who have a camera there, and they actually see the fish coming up. And he asked them, "Hey, what's the biggest fish you've seen this year?" And it was 32 inches. That was a steelhead.
Dang.
Obviously.
The camera has a tape measure on it.
Yeah, definitely, 100%.
Is this like fisherman
talk?
Yeah.
But apparently, the fish that Colin bumped into was in that class.
Oh, geez.
Okay. On a Tenkara rod. That's amazing.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And a size like 20 fly too.
That's awesome.
On 7X.
So on the Yuba, you could have a really great day with somebody who wants to do a variety of techniques, and you can kind of. Is that like, are you fishing certain spots, different techniques, or is that just kind of how are you mapping that out? If the client wants to do everything?
I always talk to the client, and I really try to find out what type of day they want, right? Because I can, especially on that river, I can craft it. If they're like, hey, I love to throw streamers. I was actually on Baum Lake a month or two ago.
Could you say that one more time? No? Okay, sorry.
I was at Luke's favorite place to guide.
Oh, okay.
So make sure you book Luke on Baum Lake. And we had caught a bunch of fish, indicator fishing, and I knew the guy had actually been there the day before. And so I was just talking to him, trying to find out a little bit more about him. And I said, what do you like to do? You like throw streamers? He's like, yeah, I love to throw streamers. And, I have the streamer rod in the boat. It was all rigged up. And I said, great, well, let's try to, why don't we switch it up? Are you cool with that? You want to try it? And so he started, railing fish with a streamer, and he didn't want to switch back. He wanted to do that the rest of the day. So, I'm always willing to talk to the client and try to find out, if they're open, if they want to stick with one, like that's totally cool.
That's cool that you're willing to do that, because with me, you just gave me an egg.
I think you told me I only fish eggs and don't want to fish anything else. I think that was actually more accurate.
Yeah, I may have said
something
that.
along that line.
So it's a year-round fishery now.
Yeah.
Barring the flow changes that you talked about, is that like, are there any? So you have a salmon return in the fall. That's a big part of the season.
Yep.
So then you have squallas in the spring. Or early spring, I guess.
Yep, and mayflies as well. I think that's one of the things that the Yuba offers. Although I know you did do some dry fly fishing on the lower Sac, which maybe we'll talk about in another episode. You had some luck out there this summer.
Don't say anything.
It was an egg dry fly
Yeah.
pattern.
True.
But yeah, so there's a lot going on out there all the time. And we have an egg bite in the spring too with sucker spawn. And you're gonna have hopper fishing in the summer as well. So it just offers you a lot of different opportunities at different times of the year.
How soon can you do the hopper thing, and how late does it go? Because a lot of people ask about the hopper thing.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think you can, once the weather warms up, right, and we start to see them, and obviously that's somewhat variable year to year, but I would say like it's reasonable to expect that late June through probably September,
Okay.
you're going to have hopper opportunities. I personally think the best window is probably kind of July through August, right? You're kind of fading in and then fading out, or
Sure.
fading into it in the beginning, fading
Okay.
out. But those opportunities are still there.
Cool. Yeah, so let me ask you before we wrap up, just about a couple of things. Rod, like what kind of gear are we using? What,
Only Tenkara.
Okay.
So a lot of standard, nothing too particularly.
Like 5 weights, 4 weights?
This year I actually shifted down to a 4-weight for my indicator rods. A nice 10-foot 4-weight. Those fish are super fun on that rod. They give you a heck of a fight, and you're not working a 6-weight all day, which I think is nice for people as well. Gives you a little bit of a break. And then nothing spectacularly, out of the ordinary for dry fly rods. Just a 5.9, 5-weight is perfectly fine. 4-weight's probably fine too.
Okay.
So just pretty standard.
What's
stuff.
kind of your typical, like, just your setup from if you're indicator fishing, and like, what's your drop from your bobber to your weights? That vary? Come on,
I can't divulge. That's the top secret.
60,
the
60.
secret sauce. It varies.
With me, you had it going. It was this, the whole day.
Well, I didn't
10
really want you to
inches.
catch
Yeah.
fish. I was trying to,
I understand.
have you not catch fish. But
Yeah.
it varies. Certainly with the egg bite. So I think this is also somewhat personal preference. If I'm fishing eggs, right, and I know we're going to be fishing shallow, I'm still going to set long, especially on the Yuba, because the water's pretty clear, and I like to create distance between that indicator and that fish's head, right, and that fly. So I'm still going to set long, right? But I would say for the most part, we're not fishing terribly deep there. We're probably in the 4 to 6 foot range.
Okay.
And then at times, depending on different water, right, I'm going to shift depth and make other
And
adjustments.
you're generally running 9x and 10x.
Oh,
fluorocarbon.
absolutely, absolutely. Nothing but.
Yeah.
And I really enjoy watching people struggle with size 22 flies as well.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah, that sounds fun. Cool, awesome. Well, it sounds like actually, I would not say it sounds. My last 2 times with you have been really fun. I mean, the days were really cool. The river was really cool. We didn't see I don't think we saw anybody both times. We were by ourselves. The fish pulled super, super hard. We did get to do different things. That was cool. And the waiting, despite being bitter about being forced to get out, no, it was a great day. And what I thought was really kind of interesting there was the terrain. Was really different than a lot of the rivers that I guide on. Because there's all the tail outs right from the I guess the
tailings,
the gold rush days. Yeah. It's really interesting though, because it's I don't know, it's hard to explain, but it's really unique. The history, and then the red bank cliffs that you see. It's just really it's very visually stimulating, I guess. You have to kind of like throughout the day you're like, oh, this is whoa,
a little different.
Where did this come from? Yeah.
And I think again that's one of the things that just makes it a nice place to switch it up a little bit, get familiar with. It does look different from the lower sack. It does look a little different from the feather and the Trinity. I always tell people that rivers are a lot like people, right? We all have our commonalities, but then we also have those things that make us unique, right? And so the Yuba has those things that make it unique, and certainly the landscape is one of those things. I grew up in Rhode Island. I'm still a big nerd when it comes to. I get really excited when I see bald eagles still, and we get eagles out there periodically. So there's there's that, which I always get excited about seeing. And then, we have the waterfall out there is pretty cool too. So there's that aspect of it. And then, you have some river otters and some beaver and stuff. So it's just a cool experience out there. I really like it.
I think one thing we do a lot is compare these different fisheries to each other. And since it is a drift boat fishery, people tend to try to compare it to the other big drift boat fishery, which is the lower Sac. Because,
Right.
a lot of people fish the lower Sac, not nearly as many have fished the Yuba.
Right.
And I think the kind of take-home message, some of the things that are unique about the Yuba, well, the size is obviously much smaller.
Yep.
The water, much of the time, is pretty much crystal clear.
Yeah.
We're on the Yuba, I would say, frequently fishing much shallower water than you do on the lower Sac.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
So maybe not slinging as much lead, as heavy of a rig.
Right.
Very enjoyable.
Yeah, and then the dry fly opportunities are just. I mean, I don't think there's a better place to fish from a drift boat in California and have a shot at dry fly fishing almost year round.
Yeah. Unless you're with Luke on the lower Sac, but that's top secret.
Right.
No, I agree.
Yeah.
It does offer that. And again, it just comes back to it being a fairly dynamic river that it's, if I had to sum it up, I'd just say it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I think, on this episode, just if anybody wants to go on the Yuba, hit Andrew up and set up a day. But we have a trip that we need to talk about coming up.
We do.
In March.
We do.
And I'm not going to
trout are not involved.
There's no trout.
No trout.
I don't do trout anymore.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
So we're going to Mexico.
Yes. But we don't like fishing together, so we're not going at the same time.
I can barely stand sitting by you right now.
Yeah.
Wait, I thought it was just you and I that didn't get along.
No, I don't get along with anybody.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
So we're
He's
going
the common denominator.
to go fly fishing, saltwater flats.
Yep. Tail end, ESB,
Yeah. And
Mexico.
so I have 3 spots open, and it's from March 21st to March 28th.
That's mine. Yours is 14 to 21.
I mean, I have 3 spots open, 14
You knew
to
that.
21.
Yeah. You were just seeing if Andrew knew.
Right.
I was just checking.
Yeah, the one that's full is the one that I'm doing. Why
have
is
3
yours
spots.
so much less
No
popular?
one wants to fish with me. If you would like to fish with me, it'd be really cool.
It would. He needs some
3 spots.
Yeah.
But bonefish, permit, tarpon, snook, hopefully sharks, because those were really fun.
Barracuda.
Wow.
Yeah, barracuda, jacks. There might be triggerfish too. There looks like there's pretty much every.
Yeah.
I mean, most people generally stay within the 4 or 5, but
Yeah, I think the permit,
yeah,
the quality of the permit fishing there is pretty high.
yeah.
I'm a like I am not familiar with this fishery at all. So what could I expect if I went there? Like, am I in high seas? Am I walking on flats? Like
You
long
mean
casts?
when you go with me or when you go with Luke?
Exactly. We're going deep.
Well, we already know that I'm
We're going
going
with
with
the
you.
blue on it, bro. No. Yeah, I mean that's a
Great question.
Yeah, it's a lot of it's flat. Fishing flats, which are these long. I mean, it's crazy how extensive these flats can be. Just like it feels like forever of just really shallow water, and so you can be in the boat. The preference, I'm convinced that Andrew's right. The walking is by far the most.
See, he'll
fun.
do it in the saltwater.
Yeah,
but
it's true. It's saltwater.
he will not do it here.
Yeah, I know. I'm not getting out of my turbo.
That's interesting.
But I know that is like kind of weird. But yeah, I mean, it's you're essentially hunting. I mean, that's the part that's really exciting. I think is your eyes are open, your guide's looking, you're looking, and you're trying to find fish tailing or moving around, and then when you see them, you try to present the fly in a not freak them out.
Non-spooky manner.
Yeah, it's really interesting because I feel like I've only done the Bahamas twice with you, and it's like sometimes it's like really easy. It's like, dude, I just threw a cast 10 feet
Like
in front of me.
Horrible cast.
Yeah, like I mean, why did it eat that? And they're all over it. And then other ones, you're throwing 80 feet and you're barely.
Still doesn't work.
Yeah, and it's like I mean, and then just like look at your fly and laugh.
The water's warm, it's comfortable,
Yeah.
and like,
Oh, man.
are you in shorts or kind of what's the deal? It's like,
Well,
preference.
sun protection's an issue, so
Uh-huh.
oftentimes just lightweight pants and lightweight shirt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think actually maybe we should do an episode on that saltwater gear. But yeah, I mean, I think I wore shorts a couple times, but a lot of times wearing pants just because the sun. I mean, you're just sunscreen all day long, but it's exhilarating. So that's a trip we got coming up.
Yeah.
And I'm definitely looking forward to going. I know you are too.
Yeah, I'm getting excited.
3 spots though, and I would say anybody if you haven't ever done saltwater, for me it is my favorite thing now. I've like trout are cool. I know trout are cool, but I'm like I just think there's nothing
He's
as
an elitist now.
I'm not an elitist. Okay, yeah, no, I think it's so challenging. That's the part that is, and it's just a different type of fishing. Like
Well, and this trip is a good trip if you've never gone before because, if you haven't done saltwater fly fishing, you're going to get exposure to bonefish, baby tarpon, permit, kind of at the minimum.
There's 2 guides in each boat.
Yes.
That is awesome.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and that just means if we're fishing from the boat, the guy in front has a helper because the guide in the back who's pulling the boat, he's pretty far away actually.
Yeah.
And so you have somebody helping you to spot the fish and also to keep your line from getting all tangled.
Yeah, it's like crazy. And then if you do walk, you both can go do your own thing.
Right.
Pretty much awesome. So if somebody is interested in that trip,
Call me. Yep, call me and I will send you the trip planner, get you more information, and then we can talk about flights and all that stuff and get you all dialed in.
Awesome. Cool. Well, thanks for all the Yuba information, Matt.
Yeah, Matt.
absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll talk to you guys later.